Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide, available on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Most homeowners don't have the time or expertise to properly take care of their home, which causes costly issues to arise. That's where Kira Home Maintenance comes in. We're a full-service, routine maintenance company that was developed by a certified home inspector. Each quarter, we service our clients' homes following manufacturer's recommendations to properly maintain all the necessary appliances. We provide the materials and expertise to prolong the life of your property, creating a healthy and efficient environment for your family. From top to bottom, we'll maintain and service your home. To get started, we have a property inspection to determine what needs to be maintained, and a maintenance plan is created based on your preferences. From refrigerator coils to filters, vents, and drains, we do it all, and we do it well. Contact us today for your free routine maintenance inspection, and never worry about your maintenance again.
Here we go. Let's rock and roll. Let me get my stuff up here. Mark Griffin on the Riderflex podcast. Hello, Mark. Good to chat again.
Hey, Steve. Same with you. Looking forward to this.
You know, I love that accent. That's got to just play well for you. That accent, walking around with that accent in Colorado. Every time you start talking to somebody, you're just immediately the cool guy in the room, aren't you? I mean, most of the time.
I don't know. I have been practicing it for 48 years. That gives something away, doesn't it? So I should have it nailed, shouldn't I? And even though I've been here 24 years, I still haven't picked up the accent. So yeah, I guess it's a differentiator, isn't it? Whether or not it's a good one or not, that remains to be seen from the folks on the other side of the conversation.
Oh, I think it's a good one. I think it's a cool factor, or whatever, however you want to label it. But I think it's definitely a cool factor. And where are you from originally? If the audience can't guess already from the accent.
Well, okay, I'm going to go small to big. So Hambleton's the village, 150 people, a pub and a church.
Cool.
Which gives it away a little bit, which is in Rutland, which happens to be the smallest county in England. And therefore England, UK is the area that I'm originally from up until 1999.
Yeah, 1999. Your parents, are they still with us? Are they
still with us, and going strong, enjoying their grandkids. I've got 3 siblings, all with kids around my age. I'm by far the oldest of the dads, but the kids are all around the same age. Okay. So they're spending a lot of time with my siblings and grandkids, and they're still in Rutland, in the house I grew up in. Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so everybody's over there but you.
Yes. Yeah, I was the lone wolf.
Okay, what'd your folks do for a living?
Dad, so both retired. Dad's only been retired for about 2 or 3 years. Mum's been retired probably more like 6, 7, maybe 8 years now. Both ran their own businesses. Dad's was family business from my mum's dad. So, and they actually, that's kind of cool how they met. But my mum and dad met because my dad was best mates with my mum's brother. So, which is, you know, I guess probably that happened a lot more back in the day, right?
Yeah, probably.
And ended up working for his best mate's dad's business, which was going for 60 odd plus years. And my dad finally sold it a couple of years ago because he was kind of the last one left and no one left in the family to sort of continue it. So that was emotional, but he was in the car business essentially and ran a number of car dealerships and gas stations affiliated with those and so on and so forth. So quite entrepreneurial and kind of people salesperson. And my mum was also kind of entrepreneurial and set up her own boarding, kennels and cattery business. So when people were going away on holiday, that would be kind of the go-to place in our area for folks to drop off their dogs and cats for however long it was. So I grew up surrounded by lots of animals and dodging dogs when I kept kicking the ball or hitting the ball over the fence.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And what kind of kid were you now? Were you the good kid? Were you the good sibling? Were you the bad kid, the rebel? Where were you in the mix?
Yeah, all my my siblings all call me Golden Boy. And when I come home, they call me Red Carpet Boy. I think that's partly because I'm the oldest,
Okay.
oldest of four. And I'd say I was always a very well-intentioned kid. And there was a moment when I was 12, which kind of took me from being an average BC student type of kid to a high performing kind of realizing my potential kind of kid. And so, but up until intention stayed the same, like I was always a good, caring kind of kid. But definitely like the realization of potential changed right around that age, which was a pretty big deal in retrospect.
What happened?
It was rugby related. But we were doing these trials, as you do every year, right, for the school team, like who's going to get on the school team. It's called probables versus possibles. Back then, I probably didn't know the difference between probables and possibles, but you kind of work
Right.
out by seeing the names on the list. You're like, okay, well, at least I'm in the probables. But you've got to like do what you need to do to earn your spot on the team. So it's a trial match and all that sort of thing. Get through the game, left everything on the field, if you like, and the coach, who happened to also be the school principal, called me over. Hey, Mark, can you come over here? And I was like, uh-oh, what did I do? Pretty sure I didn't do anything wrong. And he's just said, hey, Mark, I'd like you to captain the team. And I just remember looking up to him and just said, why? And I just had no idea, right, that I was.
But were you a natural leader? Were you a natural leader on the playground at school? Were you like, okay, guys, hey, look, we're going this way? Were you kind of already in that mode?
No. So what he said was, because you lead from the front, and I need somebody that can lead from the front. And that would have been the first time I ever realized that I was a leader. Now, whether or not I've always been a bit of a playmaker in terms of like loving to bring people together and including different kids maybe that weren't included. And I'd kind of always been a bit like that, if that's a version of leadership.
Yeah.
But not necessarily aware that I was able to like lead from the front and inspire people to sort of follow.
Cool.
And so he had that kind of belief in me, and it was coincident. Well, that led me to have a conversation with my dad, and I was quite proud, obviously. And my dad's like, well done. But if you're going to lead on the field, you've got to lead off the field. And so that was the nice, subtle, not too subtle kick up the backside moment for my dad. And literally the combination of those two things, all within this like few hour period, just completely changed my mindset.
Interesting.
And just to that other point, it's really interesting actually, because it just reminded me of something. If you went back 2 years before that, I was getting bullied.
Really?
So like friendly kid, sociable kid, involved in everything, loved all the sports, but really wanted to belong, right? Really wanted to fit in. And for whatever reason that year, couple of the guys who would have been considered the kind of leaders in terms of just having the following from the kids started coming with nicknames for kids and and I went through pretty much an entire school year of participating, but name calling and being kind of picked on a bit. And I remember being really upset about it, like crying, going home, like it was brutal. And so mum came up with all the things, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me, and all this sort of rubbish. And I tried all of it, none of it worked. Until eventually my dad, and this is only a few weeks before the end of the summer term, right, end of the school year, so it's been a bloody year of this stuff. He said, just give him a bunch of fives, son. And so I've had permission, right? And so the next time somebody said something to me, I just smacked him in the face. First time I've ever hit anybody, and the last time I've ever hit anybody outside of playing rugby, which doesn't happen very often. But, that was it.
Immediate respect. Yeah, immediate. All of a sudden, yeah.
I was part of it. Everyone stopped. And 2 years later, I was captaining all of those same lads and did for many years after that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? So let me take a pause right there, and I'll probably get a bunch of shit about this. And you don't have to agree. You don't have to comment on what I'm about to say. I'll just go out on my own island here. I taught my boys the same way. And I've heard all this other bullshit about how to handle bullying and go rat out your friends at the principal's office. And whine about it and all this, go get counseling about it. When my boys were young, I was like, no, we're not doing any of that. You're going to punch them. And once you do, it'll all be taken care of. It'll all be settled just like that. And by the way, not only will it settle it for you, but it'll probably check the bully into keeping him from doing that to others too. You'll probably do the classroom a favor. I wish we handled it more that way. But anyway, okay, cool story.
And I'm not going to give any parenting advice on that. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not recommending that as a tactic to any parents. It just worked for me. It worked for me. I must have had a good punch.
Oh man. Okay, so were you? And then in high school, you were obviously an athletic guy. Did you know by the time you're 15, 16, 17, was it pretty apparent? Like, okay, I'm actually pretty good. Like I'm better than the average kid. Did you know pretty much?
Rugby wise, yeah. I played everything. I played all sports, enjoyed all sports. Rugby was really the only one I was standout at. I was in the school teams for most of the sports. And competing on behalf of the school in most sports. But rugby was the one I was a standout in. And so by that age, you do realise, yes, because there's different trials and opportunities to, in American terms, like kind of get on the travel team and the all-star team and that sort of thing. And I was on that pathway at the age of 16. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And by the time you graduate high school, do they call it high school? I don't know what they call it.
We just call it school in England, actually. Yeah, but call it high school. Yeah, this is American.
Had you decided I'm going to go to college to play rugby?
Went to go to college, which was informed by rugby. So no scholarships or anything in England, like, because at that point university is free for everybody. All the universities, Oxford, Cambridge, like where I went, University of Durham, it's free. So there is no scholarships. Don't need a scholarship. And so the way it works over there is you kind of, you get your predicted grades. It's different to America. You get predicted grades in England 1 year before you finish high school. And then at the end of that year, you have the exams, like 9 exams or whatever on over 3 subjects. So you go in more depth, right?
All right.
And you get your results in August, and that determines which university you go to. So it's like pressure right to the end. So you have a choice. You have basically a first choice and a second choice. And your first choice is the one, well, if I get these grades, I'll go to this one. If I don't get these grades, well, I want to go to this one. So I had picked one of the top academic schools in the UK that also had a fantastic rugby program, and picked another one that was a very sports-centric university, very good at academics and in terms of business and sport. And also had an equally good rugby program.
Here's a question that maybe is a silly question, but how do they attract the best athletes if there's no scholarships and things to give away? How do they recruit certain rugby players if there's no incentive to go there? How does that work?
I'm sure it is completely different now. But then based on reputation. Schools are ranked, right, based on academics. Schools are ranked based on sports. You can see which schools win the national championships, and the school I went to had regularly won or come in the top 4 or worst case 8 of the national championships for rugby. And ranked very, very highly academically, pretty much right behind Oxford and Cambridge. So like, to me, that's a bit of a no-brainer. At that point in my kind of high school experience, having done the academic piece and the sports piece, that was the right fit. And the other school was an equally good fit, and actually would have been a better fit, as it turned out, for rugby, not because it was any better for rugby, because it was located next to a club that became a professional rugby club while I was at university, and would have enabled me to go onto that path probably a bit more smoothly.
I see. But you didn't stay at Durham the whole 4 years. You didn't get your degree from there, right?
Yeah, I got my degree from there.
Oh, you did? I see. But you got a second. Okay.
I got another degree in financial services, because I ended up falling into a banking job, and they're like, "Hey, you need to get another degree in financial services."
Whoa. I see.
You're paying for it. I'll do it.
I see. But your first degree was anthropology, I believe.
Business combination. So business, geography, and anthropology. So business was the thing I really wanted to do, but they didn't have like 100% business degree. So I combined business with one other thing I really liked, which was geography. And you don't have geography in the same way in America, but Kind of like the social element of geography is understanding different countries and different economic systems and how they work and how they operate and that sort of thing. And then anthropology was kind of the dive into the culture. So I did social anthropology around
I see.
kind of, and the business element of that. So kind of different cultures and how they show up in society and how they show up in business.
I see. And were you a starter every year on the team, rugby?
Yeah, in my second year and third year, and I didn't play at all in my first year because I literally 2 weeks before I got there, I had my first proper injury, and which was my MCL ligament, my left knee, and back then, and in England at least, in the NHS system, I had a full cast on my leg and like just complete atrophy, and so basically missed the first season.
Crusher. I bet that was a heartbreaker, right? Emotionally for a 18-year-old kid. I bet you were devastated.
Absolutely gutted. Oof. Absolutely gutted. And
man.
Because that was the big reason, the big reason I chose that school, or at least a equal big reason I chose the school alongside the academic side.
Did that get you sympathy with the chicks, or did it not help? Was it a plus or a minus?
I don't know if it was sympathy so much as how I tactically used my crutches to my advantage.
I love it. That's so good.
That's a whole nother podcast on that.
That's a whole separate thing. It's a whole.
It just brings back so many fun memories. Honestly, that whole thing. You know what was really interesting was I went straight into starting in the first side. Like Durham University had a first team, a second team, a third team, and 12 colleges that made up the university, kind of like Oxford and Cambridge, and had a starting side and a second side for each college. And I went straight into the first side for the university, which is a big deal in my second year, especially not having played my first year. But the interesting thing is, if I'd have gone in that first year, I don't know whether I would have got straight onto the team.
I see. Yeah,
I kind of got to know people a little bit. I started training and developed a reputation for being fit. And so the perception potentially of me may have been different coming in as a second year student. Who knows?
Who knows?
But it ended up working out.
Are you a big guy? What's your size?
No, not at all. I'm small for my position in rugby, which is a front row position. It's called hooker, kind of the guy that's right in the middle at the front of the scrum, that like big kind of pile up you see in rugby, the organised pile up. And generally nowadays, the average playing weight for a hooker, I would guess, is probably about 230.
That's big.
230 pounds.
Yeah,
when I played, I was 205 pounds soaking wet. And when I was really fit and a lot more muscular than I'm now, and now I'm like just 190 pounds. So no, not a big guy, but I was very, very, very fit.
6 foot tall. How tall are you?
What's that?
How tall are you? 6 foot?
I wish. Yeah. Does that make me look? Yeah, 6 foot. I am. If you add a few inches, but I'm 5'9.5", which I always used to round up to 5'10", but now I'm actually accepting that I'm probably 5'9" because I'm probably bending over a little bit more as an old man.
I got to ask you one specific rugby question, really, because I'm fascinated by the sport. I know very little about it. I mean, in that pile, right? In that pile, are there guys like your thumbs in the eyeballs? I mean, pulling the ears and stretching your mouth. I mean, are there all kinds of stuff going on in there?
Back in the day, there honestly there was a bit of that, and there was always a couple of dirty players on the team that would do stuff like that. But player welfare has just become such a huge thing, and you can't really get away with anything now, right? At a professional level, cameras everywhere. There's a referee with two guys on the sideline looking under what they call a TMO, so they're looking for infringements from the camera, and they can ready into the ref. So professional rugby, no, it's physical, it's still relatively brutal, it's incredibly tiring, but they do a lot of stuff to protect head contact is an automatic penalty, for example. Like imagine that in football, everyone will be sent off all the time, there'd be no one left on the field. Like in rugby, like you don't hit someone with your head, one, because it hurts because you're not wearing a helmet, and two, because obviously the laws of the game prohibit that now. So yeah, back in the day, a lot more rough and tumble, and a little bit of elbows and things here and there you could probably get away with, but not so much now. It's just about transferring that kind of physical energy into good tackling, good contact, good combat for the ball.
Do rugby players in the UK, do they think NFL players in the US are wimps?
I can't speak on behalf of the entire country of rugby players, but I doubt it. I think athletes respect athletes, and that there might be a groundswell of some rugby fans going, oh, well, if the American football players had to take off their pads, right? There's a little bit of that, of course, banter. But athletes, no. I mean, you've only got to be a rugby player and come here and watch those guys work out and see the speed and see the power and the pure brute strength, that they have more specialist brute strength, power, speed than rugby players do, because they're in more specialist roles and positions. And in rugby, we have roles and positions, but we all have to compete for 50 to 80 minutes. So, you know, in a continuous game. So the elements of fitness are different, but the athleticism is equally high. It's just more specialised in football. And I have a ton of respect for football players.
Yeah, the speed. The speed alone. But you don't understand how fast these guys are moving unless you're close to the field. On TV, it doesn't really do it justice. They're just incredible. Yeah. Okay. So, did you know what you wanted to be? Did you know what you wanted to do for a living? Were you
absolutely no clue? I didn't work. I probably didn't work that out till I was about 50, or that's 50, 30, 50. It's like I still haven't worked it out then. I'm nearly there. 30-ish, I'm guessing. No, what happened was it was the end of university. And I suppose to answer your question, at that time, yes. I wanted to explore professional rugby because the game had just gone professional while I was at university.
Okay.
There was a lot of challenges associated with that because there was no kind of recruitment systems, no pathways, nothing formal. It was just like clubs paying people to play and trying to work out what the hell they were doing. So what I chose to do my last year is I applied to stay for another year and got accepted onto what's called a PGCE, which gives you a qualification to teach, because I knew that if I didn't get onto a professional rugby team by staying at university for another year and trying to network with those teams and get some more playing time, that I'd love being a teacher.
Okay.
And so it kind of was that kind of dual whammy. Then I kind of accidentally went to a job interview because I went to a careers fair and met a guy that I knew because he worked, ironically, in the college bar. So I knew him really well. And he said, look, I'm working here and I've never had a bad day. And he was talking about a bank. And I'm like, you're working in a bank and you've never had a bad day? Really? So he said, look, take a look at this. And so I looked at the thing and it was kind of like all about business management and all this stuff. And I'm like, I actually really like business. I'm really not super excited about banking, but I like business. So look, I'll go to the interview. Of course, you go through the process, I get a blooming job.
Yep.
And I've already accepted a place to stay at university for another year. So I'm like, oh no, now what do I do? So of course I called my dad, didn't I? And what did he say? About time you started earning. So then I declined my place to stay at university, gave up on the rugby thing and went and did a banking job. And so that ultimately, right, it's worked out because that's what brought me to America, played rugby in America, and that was part of how I worked out by the age of 30 what I wanted to do, which wasn't banking, but banking's actually ended up being the vehicle that brought me here, and that's where I discovered it.
You came to the US to coach rugby, is that right?
Came to the US in the banking job.
Other than the banking job.
Yeah, so I was on this like management training program, and you rotated around 3 different roles over 10 to 12 months each, and the idea was at the end of those roles, you would apply for a management job in a particular area of the bank. Okay. So my 3rd rotation, I essentially applied and was accepted to come to New York. And of course, I made sure there was a couple of good rugby teams in New York, which there was, and I ended up playing for one of those. And so rugby was a hobby at that point, right?
Like a club team or semi-pro?
Yeah, the 2 teams I played for in the UK while I was banking were, if you like semi-professional. I was getting paid to play rugby, but I wasn't on a contract. So I was paid if I was selected, and I was paid if we won. But I wasn't on a contract because I had a job, so I couldn't practice during the day. I had to train with the team at night. So you're at a disadvantage, but it was better than. It's still the highest level I could have played at with a job. Right. And certainly a higher level than the level I was playing at when I got here. But I was playing at the highest level I could in the US, which was the top league in the country. It's amateur at the time. It's only been professional here for about 6-7 years. So it was amateur at the time. But what an experience, right? I'm young, I'm English, I'm in New York, I'm traveling around the country, flying around the country on a Friday night to play rugby on a Saturday, go out, have a bit of fun and come back on a Sunday. So when my banking job was up at the end of the 10 months, and I meant to apply for these management jobs back in the UK, luckily my boss in the US said, would you like to apply for one here? I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And like, not because I love the banking job, just because I was living a great life. And that was
single at the time. Single at the time. Single.
So at that time, yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, yeah, great time. Wonderful. Okay. So you said yes. And then
freedom, right? It was brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. What happened? But eventually you got out of the banking, right? Sooner or later.
Yeah.
Right?
So and that's kind of a rugby story, really, in that I realized after I've been here a year or so that actually I could compete at the highest level. I was already on one of the top clubs, and we were, you know, one of the top clubs in the country. And and I was looking around, looking at the competition. I was like, actually, what's the process here of whether I could be eligible to play for the US? And the rule is in any country, and maybe it's changed a bit now, but the rule in any country is if you've been there legally for 3 years, you're eligible to play for that national team if you're good enough, if you're selected, as long as you haven't represented another national team, you know, at the adult level, if you like. So once I realized that, I kind of buckled down and focused in outside of banking on just trying to be the best I could be. Largely for me was building on my strength of being fit. And so I was just training 3 mornings a week, 6 evenings a week, playing for my club. And 2003, I had the opportunity to play for the US against England, of all teams. I played a few games that year, but I got to play against England. And that was the aha moment. And the reason it was an aha moment was because, one, if you can imagine training 3 mornings a week, 6 evenings a week, and having a banking job in New York City, and then trying to do all the other stuff you want to do in New York City because you're young, it's pretty full on, right? There's not a lot of thinking time. It's just do. And then you go away for 2 weeks, traveling with the national team, playing in a tournament, and you're training twice a day, but you got hours in the day. You're in the hotel room, going to grab a coffee, whatever it might be, a lot of thinking time. And what that brought up, that just space to reflect, was this aha moment, which took me back to that moment I told you earlier about when I was 12. I was like, wow, rugby was handed to me on a plate. And while I was given an opportunity and somebody believed in me and I got a kick up the backside at the same time, and I did make the most of it, that's what's took me to Durham University. That is how I ended up getting over to the US. It got me into the US team. I never would have played for England, most likely would never have played for England if I'd stayed there, but I got to play against England for the USA, playing international rugby, amazing experience, complete honour. I want to provide that opportunity to kids in New York City. I see so much potential and so little opportunity for some of these kids. I can do that. That's something I want to do. And so I set up literally that week. I hadn't got a clue what I was doing, but I set up a non-profit organization, you know, and online and whatever. Got my wife at the time and my brother-in-law to be on the board because you needed 3 people to be on the board. So, you know, whatever works. And started this program on the weekends for underserved kids. And so the homeless kids from Brooklyn and from the Bronx and the Boys and Girls Club. And we started doing this on Sundays. And I did it kind of in the spring and the fall for Sundays for a couple of years. And then by then I built up a proper board. And I saw there was an opportunity to put this into schools and position this as a vehicle for youth development and helping young people break the poverty cycle, essentially, by having this community and resetting their expectations and learning the social emotional learning skills they need to be successful. So I quit my banking job in April of 2006.
And were you still playing semi-pro too while you're running the organization?
Still playing for that same club. I ended up playing for that club till 2013. So I was 37 in my last kind of full year, which happened to be the last year of that league. So it was just kind of a nice time to sunset there.
So the nonprofit was finally doing well enough to pay you a little bit, and some of the pay you get.
Not quite. No. What I did, and like, so look, you can look back on all these things. Like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. I was following a really strong passion for kids' educations and rugby.
Great. Yeah.
I was following a belief that I just knew. I knew intuitively that this game, coached in the right way, this kids would be transformational. I just knew it.
That's great, but you got to pay the rent.
And I knew I could bring people along. So, yeah, so I got certified as a personal trainer. I used my banking connections, ended up getting 10 clients myself.
I see.
Training them in the mornings and evenings, working on the profit during the day, coaching, training teachers, developing curriculum, all that stuff. That brought in some pennies, and I was married at the time. My wife had a decent job, so I couldn't have done it without her support at the time. And so I'd say there's a cushion, but there was a level of security that we could cover the bills. I didn't get for the charity for a few years actually, but I did pay it.
You figured out how to follow your passion and help the kids and pay the rent, which is great, right? I mean, it's wonderful to be able to start a nonprofit to help people, but you got to be able to pay the bills somehow personally. So you figured it out, though.
Yeah, and the rule is for anyone in any business, but 100% nonprofit, somebody's got to pay. Somebody's got to pay, and nonprofits have got to make a profit, right? All it means is you have to invest it back into the business. It doesn't get distributed out to shareholders or owners. There is no owners. It gets back in the business. But you don't make a profit, you ain't staying around. Like, that's it, period. You have to make a profit. So you do have to run it as a business. And we worked that out. We had a fee for a school fee. So we worked out which schools could pay, and they paid us for our coaches and for putting this kind of curriculum-based program into their schooends. And then beyond that, we worked out how to get grants, which had to be around academics and violence prevention at the time. But we ended up getting some big grants. And at its biggest, the charity was probably like $1.6 million and had 18 full-time people and another 80 or so.
Wow. Hey, wow. That's great. Were you also raising cash? Were you asking millionaires to write checks? I mean,
so essentially it's program revenue, grants, individual donors and corporations. Started off with like 90% program revenue. By the time I was getting ready to kind of transition out and just, hand it over to somebody else, we were roughly 25% in each of those buckets. So program revenue, grant revenue, donation revenue, and corporate. Not so much corporate sponsorship, but often corporate donations as well, but with some engagement.
Congratulations on building a nonprofit from scratch. For the listeners, do you mind sharing? Was it Play Rugby USA or USA Rugby? What was the nonprofit?
Play Rugby USA was the nonprofit that I founded, and it's still in existence in New York City. And a guy called Will Snake Rogers took it over from me at the end of 2018, and they're doing a fantastic job. I've also worked for, on two different occasions, USA Rugby in 2009 and 10 as a consultant, and in 2019 and 2020 as an employee. So I've been involved in both of those organizations. But why'd
you exit out of the nonprofit? I know everybody's going to be wondering that. So go ahead and
well, it had been 15 years of kind of committing to it, and whatever it was, 12 years of full-time my life. And I say my life because it was a huge part of my life, and there's been some casualties as a result of that, but and that as a result of my focus on it and what I was focused on.
Do you mean your first divorce?
Yep, that was one of the casualties, and the second one wasn't related to that, but the first was definitely not. That obviously is never the only thing, but I think the thing with why I wanted to exit was because one of the challenges of being like me, which is kind of possibility driven, right? If I see something and believe in it enough, and I'm confident I can get people to come along with me, that's enough for me to have a go at it. And the risk of that is you end up taking on too much stuff because you believe in it and you're confident that you can do it. And especially for me, when it's around impact. So my whole thing was like, if we can bring this to more kids, we can have more impact. And we did. Like, we got 25,000 kids, like, went through the program in various different ways. Absolute game changer for so many of those kids, and a number of them I know personally, where it has just completely changed their lives. And of course, that's kind of addictive in a way. It's just so rewarding and fulfilling. At the same time, it's equally stressful. It was incredibly stressful. And after I realized in 2016, the first board meeting of 2016, I gave 3 years notice to my board. Really? I said, by the end of 2018, I will have exited this organization. I need to, you need me to, and most importantly, the organization needs me to. It needs to find its own path. The vision will never change, but it needs to find its own path, because I had been dealing with so much of the same stress, the bad stress of keeping the lights on. How are we going to make payroll in 2 days' time? We were month to month every month, like literally month to month. Never had more than a month's cash in the bank from 2014 to 2016. And that stress wasn't good stress. It was really bad stress. I had a lot of anxiety, and it was just fueled kind of by this passion to want to continue and make it work. And I just came to the realization that things have got to change. And so what it ended up forcing for the exit was, what are the things we need to do for this organization to survive me? And that obviously, or in this instance, culminated in some very tough decisions, downsizing it by 50%, like literally letting go of friends that I'd worked with for years. But I needed to be able to hand something off that somebody else had time and space to be able to do something with. Not, here's something, by the way, you got a month and you got to work out how you go pay everybody, otherwise it all literally, that's it. So that was what 2018 looked like, and that's why I exited. And
then what? Took some time off?
No, I coincidentally during 2018 had a conversation with one of the board members that had been involved in the commercial side of USA Rugby. At the time, had a non-profit, USA Rugby, and a commercial entity. And the commercial entity had kind of fallen flat, and they were essentially in process of letting go of everybody, their board, the staff, etc. And he knew I was going to be exiting Play Rugby at the end of that year, and asked if I'd be interested in coming and sort of nurturing the commercial operations for USA Rugby, so managing the relationships that remained with the sponsors and the partners, and then rebuilding it. And so it's just funny how these things work out. I'm like, well, that's kind of a dream job, right? I've been in rugby, I love business. Now I actually I've done all this impact with kids that I'm so proud of. Now I can actually get and apply it in the commercial setting, do things differently, kind of try bringing this purpose-driven approach to partnerships. And so at the end of, I consulted with them for that second half of that year, and then started full-time employment with the USA Rugby in 2019, which is what brought me to Colorado.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, but you live in what's near Boulder somewhere, Lafayette.
Yeah,
somewhere.
you actually. I'm in Erie, and I think you're.
You're in Erie. That's
no,
right.
You're in Loveland. You're in Loveland, and Longmont was the midpoint. We said maybe we'll go and grab a.
Yes, absolutely. A pint, as you call it.
It was.
Right?
It was.
Okay. So now let's walk into. First of all, thank you very much for sharing that personal journey. I appreciate it. I think it gives the listeners a chance to really just get to know you as a human, so they kind of know your path as a human being. So at some point, you want to take what you've learned as a leader and all the things you've done to develop and guide people, and you want to be a consultant, or you want to turn that into a service or something. Walk me through how you transitioned it into Purpose Fused, which you're running now, and then tell us about the organization as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. So there's a couple of relevant points. The one of 2014, as I was starting to think about how else could I apply my skills outside of Play Rugby and beyond Play Rugby, whenever that's going to be, I came up with a kind of a rough business plan, another idea, driven by possibility. And I had a couple of different presentations on it, and I talked to a few people about it and got some impact on it, and got some feedback on it. And then it just kind of sat there for a while, right? Just kind of in the background. And then that's what I would have looked to have resurrected if that conversation with USA Rugby hadn't happened. But that conversation did happen, so that was my next step. So the next kind of outside in thing that happened was COVID, obviously, and running the commercial operations of any entity, let alone non-profit that has very limited financial capacity and little to no cushion. Yes. That was a backbreaker, literally. Like USA Rugby went into Chapter 11 2 weeks after COVID hit, which was mid-March. They went in Chapter 11 at the end of March. And I stayed with USA Rugby during Chapter 11 as one of the department leaders, and then for 6 months afterwards to transition my role over to someone else, because the role obviously changed very considerably from kind of growth and purpose driven opportunity to operations and admin and maintenance, and that's not my thing. So during that kind of window of knowing that was going to happen and being on a 50% salary and all the rest of it, I reignited that business plan and said, all right, well, what needs to be different about this? And ultimately, what is just the essence of me? Like, why did I set Play Rugby USA up? Right, on the surface, I love rugby, I love kids, I love education, I love business. Okay, great. So it's at the intersection of those things. That's just an intersection of passions. But what was it about that really lit me up? And I was like, it's human development, it's human potential. I love inspiring people to be at their best. I love doing that coaching kids. I love doing it training teachers. I love doing it designing programs. I love delivering workshops, all these things. Well, what can I do with that? And I was like, well, look, I've got enough commercial experience. I've got enough connections. I know I'm very good at facilitating, and I've done some of that with different boards of nonprofits and things. So I'm going to set up an entity that enables me to inspire leaders and teams to be their very best and to make the difference that they would be proud to make. And that was the genesis of Purpose Fused, which has been going now since the beginning of nearly 3 years, whatever that is.
Purpose Fused
2021.
Yes, 2021. Purposefused.com if the listeners want to check it out, and that's how you can get in contact with Mark. Tell us about Purpose Fused. Give us the general overview of what the secret sauce is, or how it's special, or how it's different from some of these other types of firms or organizations. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd say first and foremost, we're a premium coaching organization that majors on purpose and performance. Which means we're focused on the inside out people part of purpose, helping people identify the essence of what truly drives them, where their energy aligns, where they light up, where they can contribute at their best and contribute the most value, and deliver impact that they would be really proud to deliver. And so what we do is we coach individuals and teams, so primarily leaders of organizations, and then rolling things out to their teams, to help each member identify their secret sauce, which is their purpose, and then how they can apply that both day to day against their time and energy, because time is a finite resource. It's the one thing we actually all have control over. So use it wisely, because I say time times energy is impact. And you can have positive impact or negative impact. So you might as well leave a good ripple or good wake behind you, a positive impact, right?
I like that.
So very tactically, like repurposing of time and what that looks like day to day, week to week. What are the conversations? What do you need to do about that? And then longer term, how does that affect my career path? What conversations do I want to start having now to get my ideal role in 3 years' time? And therefore doing that holistically within an organization or a function, if it's a big organization, it's a huge tool for connection, cohesion, trust, ultimately contribution and performance, but also for the longer term kind of retention of the people you want to retain and really fill them up to deliver their best work, and holistically kind of within the context of their life. So we just have a number of programs to help deliver those kinds of outcomes.
Is your target then, your client is the HR director for a company, you're selling to the company, or do your services apply to individuals as well? Are you B2B or B2C or both?
Primarily B2B, but we would work with an individual executive in business. Usually we're paid by the business, so we're B2B in that respect. The best, in my personal view, is the best is finding the most senior business leader in a business that is truly people forward. Somebody that believes that if they invest holistically in their people are better employees, happy employees are more productive, well-being equals performance if you drive it in the right direction for both things together. Leaders who believe in that, they're the ones we want to connect with. They have a budget and we can work within their area and their discretion. Ultimately, for scale, you need to usually go through HR. So either avenue work. Yeah.
Are you targeting specific industries? And a two-part question: are you because of your price, it sounds like a white glove type service. Are you mid to large size companies? Because most of them can afford it. So kind of a two-part question there.
Yeah, industry agnostic, because people are people. Well-being, performance, and impact need to have a place everywhere. So where we focus is on the leaders. We're trying to find people forward leaders. Our approach has been to do that is through relationships and through our network, and over time that will be finite, right? So we'll need to do more marketing and more other things. But every single piece of business, funnily enough, we've had to date has come in one way, shape, or form through a rugby connection. And that happens to include some very senior leaders of big businesses, all the way to 50 people, small businesses, where we've had the opportunity to kind of work with everyone in the organization. So it doesn't matter size, it doesn't matter industry. What does matter is it's an organization that truly wants to invest in its people. And then
do I have to buy the package to cover all my employees, or what if I just wanted you to do the leadership team to start because that's the only budget I had? How does that work?
That's actually a best practice to start with a leadership team. Because after going through the process, they have a very good idea of how they might want to apply it in their particular area of the business. So that is the approach, the ideal approach. Not always the way it works, but that's the best way. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a team of people so far? Do I get you? If I schedule you, do I get Mark, or how does it work?
If you schedule me, you get me. Myself, Nell, and Neil. Nell's in New York, Neil's in London. Neil I've known for 30 plus years. We went to school or high school together. Now I've known for the last 10, 12 years from the social impact space in New York. Both incredibly talented coaches. Neil comes from HR background, Nell comes from that social impact background. We all coach individually, we coach small groups, and we facilitate workshops for teams. And we often do that work together, other than obviously the one-on-one coaching where people get whoever they request. Are
the workshops, what is the timing? I forgot to ask that. Is this a 30-day process, a 2-week process, 60-day? What is the process timeline? And are they offsite, are they onsite, or both?
So essentially, if you think there's 3 different types of programs or packages, right? So the first one is executive coaching, open-ended coaching, packets of 6 coaching sessions. The difference of our coaching to anyone else's would be the first 6 sessions are all around purpose discovery and coming up with a game plan, sort of best chapter game plan for your next chapter of life, and then what you're actually going to do with that. So that tees up the first 6 sessions, and then from then on it's making it happen, building the goals, getting over the barriers, and regular kind of executive coaching. So that has obviously no potential end to it, and the frequency of that would be every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on what somebody's preference was. Got a program called Live and Lead with Purpose, which is individual purpose discovery that can be done either one-on-one. The quickest it can be done is over 8 weeks, up to 12 to 16 weeks, or in small groups, which is how it tends to be delivered in businesses. Super powerful because people connect around these incredibly meaningful conversations. And so that it's averaged about 10 to 12 weeks for delivery of that program, where people spend over that period about 24 hours in the process, half of those on their own going through this program and curriculum we developed for them, and then half of those hours with us unpacking that, making meaning of it, and helping them advance it forward. And then we've got another program that's specific to teams and team performance, which is 4 workshops over 8 weeks. So there's varying different options there depending on what people are looking for. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good. Do you find that so many people have gotten themselves into a position or a job, just we'll just call it a job. They've gotten themselves into a certain job almost by accident. They started making a certain amount of money. Then they built their material life around that with a certain home in a certain neighborhood and a certain car. And now they have to have that job because they're leveraged and they're tied into it. And next thing you know, it's 10 years later and they're doing something they're not truly passionate about. Do you see that all the time?
See it quite a lot. I think especially with our generation, right? Because the way we were brought up, yes. And there's nothing wrong with any of this, right? It served us all very well. I think that it was kind of head down, work, commit, like, so it drives that kind of success. And so the way I look at this is, and everybody goes through this process differently and at different points of their life. there comes a point when you reframe success
Yeah,
and you're looking for significance.
it's true. No, I did.
And it tends to happen in your mid-40s. But for some, we work with like kids out of college, right? Through some of these corporate programs, we're working with C-level and 25-year-olds.
It's happening earlier. No doubt about it. The millennials
They're more
are
intentional.
way more than we were. Yeah, I was in my I was almost 50 before I had this moment. But now the millennials, they're way ahead of us.
Yeah, and it's just and Gen Z, and it's not that. You know what's interesting though is at the essence, everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants meaning, connection, belonging. They want to feel valued. They want to know they're contributing and adding value, and they want to feel recognized for that value. Everybody wants that. Mm-hmm. The younger ones are more intentional about articulating it, and actually, in my experience, are able to better articulate the impact that they want to have. Mm-hmm. The older generations still want all of that stuff. They're just realizing it now, going, what am I going to do? So it's still intentionality. It's just come later. They've known it all along. It's just now surfaced, and now they want to do something about it. The approach, therefore, is the same for everybody. It's just that's where I look at these generational differences and say that companies, that's not your focus. Don't focus on the generational gap. Focus on meaning, collection, belonging, value, and people feeling valued. And what does that look like for everybody? And then you apply it slightly differently. If you focus on those things, you're in good shape.
That is good stuff right there, Mark. I couldn't agree more. I see it a lot more in talking to candidates. Recruiting for our day job at recruiting firm at Riderflex is a recruiting firm, and so I see it a lot more now. It's chasing experiences instead of material things. It's work-life balance, or however you want to title it, a meaning, a passion, make a difference somehow in the world beyond just being able to buy the speedboat that I want, or whatever material thing it is that people used to chase. They definitely have that going for them. Now, to pick on millennials, I will say that our work ethic as Gen X is maybe still stronger on a regular basis, but that's okay. I just wanted to get that little dig in there.
Yeah, you might. I mean, to be fair, you would have a better insight into that than me. My experience is that I don't necessarily agree with that from the millennials I've worked with and the Gen Zs that I've worked with. I think the difference is the organization and the leaders of those, whether it's the older people or the young people, understanding what motivates people, what's on their agenda, what are their ambitions in life, not just at work, where's their natural energy sit, what lights them up. Like, if you look at all of that, everyone's going to work equally hard. I mean, everyone has different levels of work ethic, but I tell you what, there's not one person that can operate at peak performance if their natural energy is not aligned to how they're being asked to contribute, period. Yes. Yeah, but everybody whose energy is aligned can. And that's what it comes down to. So because these kids, I feel, are more intentional about what they want, they just don't necessarily want what the journey is yet because they haven't done it. But they're intentional about the steps. I see a lot of work ethic there when their energy's aligned to when they feel they can make the best contribution. The difference is for the older ones, we're told work hard regardless of how it feels. Well, you can do it, of course you can do it, but you can't sustain it. You can't sustain it. You can only sustain it if the energy is aligned in that direction.
One of the big things I always push candidates towards now when we talk to them is, please don't rush out to get that next job just to make these certain bills. Don't take, that job pays $175. Okay, cool. I'll take that one because I know it covers these bills, and that's all. I really feel bad for people when they do that because they end up being miserable, and then they're driving to work every day in a job they hate. They might be driving the car they want to drive, but they're miserable. And so I really encourage them to, what I need to encourage them to do is call Mark.
Well, and look, what you should be looking for is the job that, so let's just say, let's say my energy is around driving people towards possibilities, right? That's kind of the thing. That's why I left the banking, where I was just implementing stuff I didn't really believe in. even though I was working with good people, to doing something that was very meaningful and that I believed I could bring people along. That's my energy. That's where it sits. So whenever I am contributing to that, that's when I can perform my best. So why not find the job where your energy is aligned and you get paid 175? You know,
Yes. There you go.
That's the ideal, of course, right?
That's an ideal
because
situation.
it's not that money's a bad thing at all. Like we all need it, and to a certain extent, when you've got a certain amount of it, you can get more of it, right, by being intentional with it. But I would never personally put money over kind of energy and impact, which is where like I want to live.
Totally agree. Last question, because I know we're out of time, and just purposefused.com. And also you can find Mark Griffin on LinkedIn. There's a bunch of them, but if you'll look for Lafayette, Colorado, he'll probably pop right up, because I'm sure there's more than one Mark Griffin, but you can connect with him there too. Anything else? Oh, you want to mention the podcast real quick?
Oh yeah, we have our own podcast, so I'll have to extend an invitation for you for that one. But called Connecting with Purpose. It's on our website, so purposefused.com. We've got tons of insights, very practical stuff. So if you want to just dive into this a little bit more, feel free to just read some of the stuff there, listen to some of the podcasts. We had a couple of seasons, some fantastic conversations with purpose-driven leaders and from all different sectors, and even from military and sports and things, not just business. And on LinkedIn, you'll find me under Purpose Fused, obviously.
Okay, last question. I think you're my age, or I think I'm maybe older. I don't know. You're
a little older, but we discussed how your moisturizer must be a lot better than mine.
Yeah, it's the filter. It's the filter on Zoom.
Okay.
How are you staying in shape, Mark? You still look great. I mean, what are you eating? Carrots every day? Are you? What are you doing?
Yeah, I can see all through the house at night. I'm one of these people. I work out regularly 6 days a week, but never for more than half an hour. And roughly I do 2 lightish things, which is a very new thing for me. I'm still wrapping my head around it. The kind of like zone 2 heart rate stuff, right? Because now it's not about competition for me anymore and competing on the field. It's about longevity. So 2 lightish things, 2 more intense things. One will be a kind of a hit thing. The other will be a straight cardio, kind of try to hit a personal best, whether it's running or Peloton or whatever. And then I'll do 2 kind of weight sessions. One's more circuity and the other's more not technically strength, but heavier stuff. I don't do anything heavy anymore. So a good mix of everything, and hills and hit will be all sorts of different things. I like to mix it up. I still do some of the stuff that I used to do for rugby, just a little slower and slightly.
How about diet?
Just started focusing better on that. I mean, my general rule, right, is to just try to minimize the processed stuff. So if you can buy the veggies and buy the meats, I eat anything. But if you can buy the stuff from the produce aisle and buy the meats, like that's where I like to play. I've only recently, I've been candy king forever. Since I will sit on the couch and get through like that many chocolate raisins. So I've stopped that a few weeks ago. Just stopped drinking caffeine in the afternoons to try and help with sleep. Doesn't still prevent the 1 and 4-year-old waking me up. So I'm focusing a lot more on that kind of eat, sleep, drink, move area of well-being now. Just 50's around the corner, and I want to be cruising through it and not thinking about it. That's
great, man. Congratulations, Mark, on not only just a great life, a fascinating story, lots of successes, and now your own business. It sounds like it's already taken off, and you got partners strategically located, I think, in New York and overseas in UK. I think that's awesome. So wishing you the best, my friend. Thanks for sharing your story on the Riderflex podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Steve. Really appreciate it.